Welcome, welcome to See Yourself in Tech, where I talk to technologists about their journey into the industry. I'm Kedasha, your lovely host, and I'm so happy to be here with you today because today we will be speaking with Kelvin, and Kelvin is a software developer, and he also interviews junior developers and engineers to get on engineering teams. So I'm super happy to ask him a lot of interviewing questions that you submitted. Hey everybody, good morning, happy Saturday. Thank you so much for being here with me today. Like I was saying before, today we're chatting it up with Kelvin, who is a software developer and he's also a content creator. I really enjoy his posts and his insights whenever he shares them here on Instagram. So let me go ahead and not introduce him, but like put him up on the screen. But before that, some housekeeping. So we get a lot of questions in the comments, and so I'm gonna ask you to post your questions in the question sticker below. If you have questions, it gets very tedious and very difficult to look at the questions as they come up in the comments. So please post your questions in the question sticker. So let's invite.
Okay, I think I sent it. To join us and we can get this started. Hey!
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me properly?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah.
Awesome. Like, these headphones have been giving issues this week, so I'm happy that they're working now. You look just like your pictures on Insta.
Thanks. Yeah, you too. I mean, you have a lot of videos, so like you look just like you on the videos. So
Thank you.
it's
Thank you.
good
I
to
try
like
not to
really put
do.
face to face and meet you though. Like I feel like I know you just from through your
Oh,
content.
good.
And so it's really cool to just finally see you and meet you. And hey everybody, good morning or wherever you are. Happy Saturday. So
Happy Saturday. But yeah, it's really cool to connect with you. Like, I think I've been following you since I started the accounts, like since last year. And I
wow.
was like, ooh, this black dude in tech, he's also a developer. That's so cool. So like it kind of encouraged me to like start sharing too.
Uh,
Um,
That's
and
that's
here we
crazy
are.
you say that because you encourage me to share more because I like the consistency that you have, and I'm like I need to step up my consistency like you and then the content you share like not even to mention like yeah I'm just giving you your flowers while I can. It's great
Thank you,
content.
thank you, thank you.
So
I'm just trying to get our people in tech, okay? Like,
you
it's
said
nice
what?
over here. I'm just trying to get people in the industry.
Oh
Like, it's
yeah,
nice over here. It's
right,
nice.
right. People don't know. I didn't know at one point
Yeah,
a long time ago when I entered. I didn't know.
yeah,
So like that's part of my goal too is just to let people know what's going on over here and that it's possible to get into it and just help along the way as well, like wherever you are.
absolutely, absolutely. So let's get into it, right?
Sure.
So today we're having an Ask the Interviewer session where you can ask Kelvin whatever you think you'd like to ask an interviewer to know about how to prepare for an interview. Drop the questions below. I do have like a list of questions that I got, so we'll start with those. But before we start, let's get into it. So Kelvin, tell us about yourself. Who are you, and how can you talk about being an interviewer?
Cool. That's a great question. So I'm Kelvin Graddick, aka KG.codes on Instagram and all the social media platforms. So I'm a software developer. I started in the industry. I guess I don't feel old, but I guess comparatively to the industry and especially like on social media, I've been in the game probably like 10 years now total.
That's
So it's
wild.
been a while, but I still feel so new just because everything's new every year. So I feel
Yeah.
young, I feel new, but I've been in the game a while. I went through college. I was trying to be an engineer and I got in school and I hated engineering, but I took a programming class, just part of engineering, and I just fell in love with it. Switched majors, and it goes back to the first point. I didn't even know there was even a major. I didn't know how you get into computer science and programming and stuff like that. But I was, lucky enough to find it early. Got a computer
Hmm.
science degree, finished school, and started a job about 8 years ago at a chat company that provides chat for a lot of like large automotive dealerships.
Nice.
And I started there as a full stack dev. It was a super small team, and I got lucky of like four people where I was able to do everything from build APIs to building console applications that process emails or process leads, to building mobile apps, to building building web pages, and then learning frameworks and JavaScript frameworks and things like that. And then I moved on to a larger chat company called LivePerson, which they support brands like Verizon and the Home Depot and like these huge companies. Whenever you see the little chat box pop up when you can type and message your customer support, that's the box that I work on in my team, of course. More recently, I became about the last year or two. I was a team lead for a few years before that, so I was kind of grooming up to it. But the last couple of years, I've been an actual official manager.
Hey.
Yeah, moved into management, and have direct reports, and it's completely different. It's still development, but I was interviewing the whole time, really from the start. It was really beneficial to be able to interview. You learn so much from just interviewing about how to interview, and you just learn stuff because you're trying to prepare for the interview. You learn that interviewing is a skill in itself, and not only good interviewers. So to everybody out there that's taking these interviews, sometimes you can't feel so bad because not interviewing is hard itself.
It's very
But
difficult.
yeah, right. But yeah, I've been interviewing, and I've been doing interviews the whole time, and then especially when I became a manager, it's just like, I mean, I don't remember how many interviews I've done. I've done interviews for every single level of developer.
Nice.
I've done interviews for development managers, other development managers. I've done interviews for product managers,
Nice.
for project managers, interviews for QA personnel. So I've done it all. So I don't know. I don't pretend to know everything, but I will help with what I have, with the knowledge I have, and I'll give the best answers possible from my perspective. So
I love
I'll
it.
stop talking from that point.
That's all right. I love it. I remember one day you posted something about interviewing, and that's when I learned that wait a minute, he does interviews. We gotta go on
Yeah.
live. And
I
so
was like,
like,
I think I posted probably like a couple few things, but I think one of the best things I felt it was super helpful was the questions to ask back to the interviewer. About that, I posted a bunch of stuff about interviewing, but I know it was one about what you should ask back to the interviewer to not only show that show that you have interest and show that you're kind of engaged, but you're going to be coming to a place 40 hours a week. You really, like, as much as they're interviewing you, you have to interview them. You have to find a way to interview them well, because where you spend 40 hours a week, that's gonna affect your life. That is a big chunk of life. You need to make sure you're in a good environment that is good for your career, that you're working on what you want to work on, and that it's good for you as well. So like, it was some questions just to look for some flags, and try to help out with that. But I'll let you get started with the other question.
that's okay. Absolutely true. And for everyone who's joining, hey, welcome to the chat. If you have questions, please pop them in the question box below. A lot easier for me to manage. If you post them in the chat, I'm going to miss it because it's hard to scroll while chatting with Kelvin. And so let's get into it, Kelvin. So like, when you're interviewing somebody, especially like junior developers or junior engineers, like what are you looking for in terms of like for a hire?
That's a great question. So at the junior level or at the entry level, most of the time at that level, since you're not going to have work experience for me to look at, and this is at a lot of places, this is just generally what gets discussed as far as I know, in the industry. But since you don't have much experience to look at, what we're going to look at, we're going to ask a lot of conceptual questions. So we may ask, what is the difference between var and let in JavaScript? We may ask questions around concepts of either a programming language, as well as concepts around development in general, about what you've learned, like what is clean code, the concept of clean code, and things like that. We're also going to ask more questions like data structures and algorithms questions, as well at a smaller level. And I know that's a taboo thing. Me personally, I don't prefer to ask those types of questions. Maybe because I'm old school and I kind of predated a lot of it, but I've been pushed and forced to
Of course, yeah.
learn these things. I had to do it in interviews, and I've been forced to do it myself in interviews, and I've been forced to interview with it. Like, it's our policy to ask those types of questions.
Ooh,
So that's the one thing. So even if the person asking you these questions might not even really be like, I wish I could interview in a different way, but they may be getting pushed to do so because the company has a bar. And for better or for worse, these types of questions, these data structure and algorithm questions, are the bar that I believe Google set first, and the rest of the industry is just trying to follow. And I can see some positives on the other end where um, it can help to level set and make sure that the interview process is the same, and
sure.
it can help conceptually figure out some things. But I won't go in. I guess the question is not about my opinion about them, but that I would expect that you would need to prepare for that, because there's nothing else. It's not much else to be relied upon in the interview. But every company's different. Smaller companies may not do it. Even some of the larger companies may decide to omit that and focus more
Mm-hmm.
on concepts and focus more on what you learned in school. But if you don't have any experience, it's, you have a list of things to talk about. You could talk about your side projects that you did to build your resume up. You could talk about what you did in school. But for the most part, in my experience, it's been more like, do they know the concepts, and can they answer some sort of coding challenge, where it is data structures and algorithms, leak code type questions, or it's some sort of, the ones I like are the ones where you set up an environment and you solve a real working problem at the company.
That's the ones I
That's
like too.
that's the ones I like the best. And
Yeah,
I try to do that when I can, when I'm allowed to. That's what I prefer, because it's more applicable to the job. Right.
yeah.
So, yeah.
So
So
what
that's
I'm
how I
hearing
answer
you
that question,
say,
on what you need to focus on at the junior level, I believe.
yeah, so what I'm hearing you say is if you're a junior developer and you're going into interviews, you need to focus on understanding the fundamentals of
Right.
the language or the concepts that you'll be working with. And
Right.
also, it's also important to know how to solve the annoying data structures and algorithm questions,
It
because
sucks.
those are going to come up in interviews because it's like a baseline for developers to get into the field.
Right. And I mean, as junior level, you'll typically get some of the easier ones, maybe like a medium. If you're looking at the leak coding levels, I mean, as far as my experience, you'll typically get some easier ones. But
Mhm.
the bad part about it is they suck, and they kind of don't apply.
They
You get to the
suck.
job, they don't apply
They
to the job.
suck.
But
Like especially if you're going for like a front end role or like an
right,
Android
you're
or
right. It's like
iOS, it's
nothing.
like, ¿por qué? What is the reason? I'm just fixing buttons. I'm trying to put the button in the middle.
Right.
Like, what is,
Ask me a
what is the
flex box
problem?
question. Ask me how to center this button or something.
Yeah,
That's the ones I've gotten an interview like that before, and I was like, this is really
yeah,
good. It was like,
yeah,
go and learn. Go and We have a view page that's screwed up really bad. Go and fix it. Flexbox this button around.
absolutely,
Loop this.
absolutely.
Pull out this component and loop it. Programmatically instead of copying it. Like conceptual things, but that you apply in code. I like that.
Yeah.
But
I believe that the industry, the interviewing process, especially for engineering, needs to change because the industry has changed so much, right?
yeah,
It's no longer CS students that have studied algos for 4 years coming out
right,
of college or 2 years.
right.
It's like career changers. A lot of people
Yeah,
go into boot camps are
boot camp.
going into the field now, and it's just like the face of the
Right,
industry is changing. Literally, it's a lot more color,
right.
and so I
Yeah,
feel like the interviewing process needs to adapt and change as well. But I
totally.
digress. So
Man,
the next question,
as a
the
get
next
into another question,
question,
'cause I can sit on that one all day for sure.
the next question I have for you from the community is: what type of projects should junior devs have on their resume? Like, what are you looking for in projects?
Oh man. So maybe this question gets a different. It's a good question. Maybe this question gets a different answer from different people. For me personally, uh, what I'm looking for is there's a lot of projects you can do to practice your skill. What I like to see is what I call like real projects or productized projects. Like
Okay.
you can, so let's say you make a calculator app. What I like to see is that you've deployed it, you have it on a public URL, you have it, even if no one uses it and finds and uses it, but you
Mm-hmm.
went through the full process of getting it out. Is like, because nowadays it's a lot of devs are kind of being, even the front end devs are kind of being pushed to be, a little bit more DevOpsy a little bit sometimes. And like
Yeah.
kind of even if you don't work on the back ends or the infrastructure stuff, you need to code in a way that you understand the impact of your code on where it gets deployed. So I like to see like a productized, real, uh, real product that you put out there that people are using, that you get feedback on, especially if you're coming from like either a boot camp scenario or you're coming from a scenario where you don't have much experience, you're changing. Like, I'll tell this little quick story, and this will be the end of my answer. When I got hired, I had went and did this social media app that completely failed, right? But we put it out, it worked. When I got in an interview, I could show them that it was online. They could log in,
Mm-hmm.
post, and from that, and it was just up and ready to go. And it was something that I really did, and it truly counted as real experience because I productized it. And it's like a trick to be able to say, okay, I don't have any experience, or get like contracts from people. Actually get somebody, like do a free project from somebody like down the street or somebody, a family member that you know, and say that, okay, I was really doing some freelance work. This, Katie's Bakery really is using this website that I built now. And, this is official experience that I have. I think that's a nice trick for when you don't have a lot of experience, or you're trying to like pad your boot camp, experience, or you're trying to pad something else. Even trying to pad your degree, even if you got a degree,
Mm-hmm.
for sure.
I agree. Like having a deployed project where somebody can go and play in the application, that says a lot about the engineer or the developer that's interviewing, because they not only know how to code it from scratch, they know how to put it,
Put it,
they know how to deploy it and host it and maintain it. And
maintain,
then if you have users that are giving you feedback,
fix
they know
bugs on it.
how, right? They know how to fix bugs, and I think that does say a lot about.
It's more work.
Um,
It's worth it
it's
though.
a lot of work.
A
It's a
lot of
lot of
work.
work.
I just think it's worth it because, like, I'm saying this from an interviewer or hiring manager's perspective. There's already a filter at the HR level. So by the
Right.
time it gets to me, it's filtered down. And
Yeah.
when I get 10 resumes in a day to filter through, it's just unfortunate. You feel like everybody's going to look at every single thing on your resume, but sometimes it unfortunately gets skipped. And the things I do end up looking at are things that have links, and I can click on it and go look at, because I'm at my level, I'm smart enough to kind of see, okay, if you built this, like I can see what technologies you use. I can kind of look in the
Mm.
page, and I can maybe go skim the code and say, okay, he used Vue, or he used React for this, or he used whatever for this, or she used this for that. I can go and see that. But if you just send the GitHub link, a lot of times, they're not
It
gonna,
doesn't real. Yeah. It doesn't really
yeah,
mean much because you can't see it.
right. Or they're just not gonna look at it, not gonna take the time to read code. They're like, I already did 3 code reviews today. I'm not gonna look at,
Right.
so I think it just makes it more real and makes it like more experience and just solid on your resume.
I agree. It's one thing to share code, but then it's just like you're gonna have to go through the code and evaluate
Right,
the code to see what the quality of the code is like. But it's
right,
a completely different thing to click a link and say, oh wow, look at this website. Oh wow, and then you get sucked
right,
in because you're just like, wow, this person actually built
right.
this.
Cool, yeah.
I mean, yeah. So I can definitely see that. And so like you said that you also interview for product managers, quality QA testers, all types of roles. So like what makes a candidate stand out to you to say, yes, this is the person I want to bring on our team?
Oh man, that's a few different things. For me personally, team fit, personality is really big for me. So I know it's hard because we're nervous in interviews.
Mm-hmm.
If you need to work to try to get less nervous so that more of your personality can show in the interview, as
Mm-hmm.
much as we need to you do need to focus on lead code and questions. You need to prepare technically and be strong technically. And you need to prepare your resume. You need to do all that stuff. But if you can come with a good personality and the person feels like they feel like even if you don't know something technically, they're willing to learn it, or it would be easy for me to teach them, and they're not just kind of where it's like if they don't know something, because where you can get in a situation. Devs have different personalities. You can get in a situation with a dev that doesn't know something, and that's okay, but then they don't want to get helped, or they don't have and that's when you get in a bad spot where they're so proud that they don't want to get help. So a lot of times if I see somebody in an interview that's kind of like, if they're showing like some sort of pridefulness or something that just shows me that they can't, they're not willing to learn from others, be mentored and ask questions, right? Ask questions, the right questions, and not just go into recruit into a hole for 2 weeks and then come out at the end of the sprint and then like, hey, I needed some help this whole time. And we're just like,
I did nothing for 2
wow,
weeks.
yeah. And so I really look like the team fit goes a long way for me. So just make sure your personality shows through, that you smile in the interview, and that you're gonna get stuff wrong, but that you try your best. I know it's hard because I've been in them and been nervous, and anxiety gets to you. But if you try to make sure your personality, even if the interviewer is dry, just try to have your personality show through. Because it does help. Because I've seen so many people get hired, they just say they don't know this, but I think they got the personality to learn, and I think they're you mentioned that in the interview. I'm willing to learn. I don't know that, but I'm willing to learn it, and they will give you more of a shot rather than if you just kind of a know-it-all and then you're just getting stuff wrong, and then they're just like, well, he's not going to listen to me if I try to tell him that it's right. So so I'd say really don't forget that. I want to mention that here because people kind of forget that as part of it. That we are looking for, and a lot of companies have culture fit questions specifically that they have to ask. Amazon, I think, calls them principles, and my company has principles, and every company has principle questions where they take their principles and form questions to try to get that kind of feel. So make sure you do that. But on the other end, I'm looking for how you, in the coding challenges, I'm looking more or less for how you think, rather than just perfectly getting the answer right, especially at this level. So if you're struggling on a problem, just try to talk through it, try to work through it with the interviewer like you're working with them at work. Like, okay, I think, I'm thinking this here. What do you think about this? Don't be afraid to just ask them like a question like, hey, like, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? Should I do this? Should I do that? Just make sure you're getting your thoughts out and not just being quiet, because the more quiet you are, the more the interview doesn't know what's going on and how you're thinking through the problem. Where you can kind of get some points if they can see, okay, they didn't get through the whole problem, but the way they thought through some of the parts of it were good. And that can give you more of a chance on those type of problems.
I love
the
that. So
last
what I'm
thing I'll
hearing,
say, and I'll let us move on, is don't be afraid to say no. That's one thing. If you can expose so many issues. Like I say, if I asked you what's the difference between var and let in JavaScript, what's the difference between those, and then you just kind of guess, you can potentially expose more knowledge gaps than the original question asked, because then you might start talking about const, and then you say const wrong, and then you just start. So then I'm like, oh, well, not only does he not know this, or she does not know this, she doesn't know this over here either. So it's sometimes you just have to just say no, unless you kind of got a really educated guess. Just say, I don't know, but I can figure it out. I can research it, willing to learn. So
one thing I like to say is, honestly, I really don't remember, and I really can't believe I don't remember, but I don't remember that right now. But best believe after this interview, I'm going to look it up, so it's in my brain, right? Because that shows initiative, that shows you're honest, and that shows that you're willing to beef up your knowledge because you forgot something so basic. So like what I'm hearing you say is, when it comes to what you're looking for, or like what makes people stand out to you, you're looking for someone who is, as I like to say, it's like who brings the energy, right? They bring the energy to the interview, because like think about it, interviewers are coming in, especially if you have an interview at like 3 p.m. 4 p.m. They had a long work day, right?
Long day.
They had a long
Sometimes they
day,
don't
like,
want to go to the interview. It's not about you,
exactly.
but they just tired. They just don't want to
Yeah,
go.
they had a
So when
long
you
work day, and then they're gonna have to come and interview you for a job. And it's just like, oh my God, I forgot I had this interview sometimes. So it's just like you have to bring the energy, show that
right,
you're inquisitive, show that you're willing to learn, show that
yeah,
you're excited about the company. Let the interviewer smile, right? Let them
right.
feel good with you, even though some people are just hard
Some
butts.
of them are like it's just
Some of them are
still
hard
just
to
gotta do it
penetrate.
like because
Yeah,
sometimes they're hard on the outside to people they don't know, and we all got different personalities. But sometimes they still come to the interview debriefings like they had a really great personality, and they're like the hardest person ever. And they're looking at you like they not even responding to your smiles and stuff, but they actually inside are like, oh, this is a pretty easy person to work with. So
yeah. That's awesome. So should someone still apply for a job even if they don't fit 100% of the job description?
yes, for sure, for sure. So for one, sometimes the person writing the job description isn't the same person that's actually hiring sometimes at some companies. Sometimes it's the HR person writing it. Sometimes it's a separate consulting company kind of like adding stuff into it. Or not some consulting company, but a
Recruiting
yeah,
company.
recruiting company. Like it could be a recruiter or a recruiting company. There's so many layers to hiring nowadays. And,
Mm-hmm. So
you know,
many layers.
sometimes like I've seen where they'll ask for like back when React was younger, they'd ask for like 8 years of React or something, and React hadn't even been out that long. Like stuff like that where they just don't understand. And even for the people hiring, sometimes they just it's hard. Hiring's hard, and sometimes it just don't happen
Yeah.
right. And sometimes you're I wouldn't just say go for something that you just don't know nothing about. For sure. But if you're close and you think
Yeah.
you can fill those gaps, and there's some things you won't be able to fill the gaps on, I say go ahead and apply. Don't cut yourself out before you even try. Because
Yeah.
if they don't want you, they'll filter you out at some stage or whatever. But if you're able to get the interview, don't not try, because like I said earlier, like you may get an interview and they may see you have a gap. Every single person that interviews, I don't care how good they are, everybody has a weakness that is going to get talked about in the debrief. It doesn't matter how good you are. You can be perfect on the coding side and the tech side, but then your personalities, we're like, nah, that's not a team fit. I don't think we can work with them. Or, so it's always something. So just don't ever rule yourself out. Your weaknesses can be overcome, and it's not weaknesses, it's like learning opportunities, and sometimes the interviewer can see it as that too, and hire you anyway. So definitely
Makes
short
sense.
long answer to yes.
So like how are you evaluating responses after the interview? So you said sometimes during the debrief, it's just like, well, I really like their response to the code. They did really well on the coding challenge, but when it came to their personality, I couldn't really get a good feel. Like, how are you evaluating how a candidate responds to questions when you do go into that debrief session?
Oh, that's a great question. At my company, we have a lot of companies have an interview loop, and then after the loop, everybody that interviewed comes together for a meeting. So anybody that didn't know that they're coming together and talking about you for a good 30 minutes to an hour.
Oh
Not to
gosh.
put pressure on you, but I think that should give you more. That means there's really a balance, is what I'm saying. So even if you do bad on one interview and you do good on another one, they're gonna come together and it's gonna balance out, because the one that's saying something bad, the other one
Hmm.
offended on the other side. So it's a way to balance it out. So I say that not to scare, but I say that to say that in a lot of places it is a way to make sure that there's not any like one off, like everybody liked them, one person didn't like them, and make sure it doesn't like
Right.
automatically or something screw up the whole thing. Like there's a
Ugh.
process where we all talk. But
Because like as
yeah,
the put a pin right there, as a candidate, like if you have, let's say you're in a panel and you had three people that you're talking with for 20 minutes each, and let's say the second one didn't go well, but the other two really went well. As a candidate, I'm really focused on the one that didn't go
you're gonna
well,
focus so
and
much.
I'm just like, dang, I lost the job. Like, dang, I
Right.
can't believe
That's
I
the thing.
messed it up.
Right. And I
So it's
just,
good to know that there's a balance, and it's
there's
just
a
like it's
balance.
not just
It's
up to one
on.
person.
Yeah, the last one I was in, it was like that. It was like one person that was just like, let's not hire this guy. It was just like, and I'm sure the guy was just like, man, that went bad. But
Yeah.
we all sat there and said it, even him, we were like, this is why we have these debrief meetings, because we need to balance it out. Because sometimes the interviewer missed something, or it's just something in the air that just makes
Yeah,
that one
candidate
bad.
got really nervous,
Yeah,
like
nervous, or the questions they
the
asked just didn't happen
question.
to line up. They didn't hit home with what the person kind of was prepared for. But that's why you have more. That's why we had these long panels. As much as they suck for the interviewer to have all these long panels, I know it's a lot of time. It sucks. It
I
is
mean, they stuff for everybody. I mean,
right. It's like a 7-game series in the basketball. Instead of you just got one game to win or lose, you got more than one. And so, how many can you win out of all of it? But yeah, the things we look for in that is we have a leveling guide, and a lot of companies I think do, because a lot of companies will have like these SDE 1, or like software developer 1, software developer 2, software developer 3. So we try to go against what is expected in that role, and then you could be leveled up or leveled down based on, like, if you're overperforming. If the role has freedom to change, you may be leveled up or leveled down based on that. So we look to measure you up against the leveling guide, as well as the principles I talked about earlier, which kind of tie into team fit, personality. Are they easy to work with? Will they be easy to mentor? Can they work on their own? Will they ask questions? Will they take ownership when they need to take ownership? Like that kind of stuff is all of our leadership, or I can't remember what we call them, but principles in our company that need to be also, measured against too. Because we've definitely seen people, we've had people just fail the personality, kind of the leadership principles part, for various reasons. So when they were great devs, technically, so.
What
Yeah.
makes them fail?
So the thing is, like, it's hard to interview. You're interviewing someone for 45 minutes to an hour. It's hard to really see their personality. So that's
Correct.
why I say it's really important to just try to make your personality shine through. And what makes people fail is when they have just very weak answers to these principal questions, where they don't talk about themselves enough. So be a little selfish. So yeah, your team helped you do everything, and you can say, if you're spiritual, you can say God helped you, everybody helped you, but in the interview, you did it. You did every talk about what you did yourself. And if
Hilarious.
they ask you, let's say the question is, how did you work against you had a conflict in the team, somebody trying to do something, you were trying to do one thing, technically, you want to use one technology, they want to use another one. How did you resolve the conflict? And a lot of times people can fail where I've had times when they just said, yeah, I just went to the manager and I just started talking about him, and then we just got it all, just like, really, you can tell when something's weird or when somebody's a little bit off, and you get that little sense. And in 40-minute interview, if we get a hint of anything, it can snowball. It's
That's
fair,
true.
not fair, but it's
True.
first impression, and that's just how it goes. So if you say something weird where, oh yeah, I had a fight with my manager, and then I just went to his boss, and then he told on him, and like, people actually let that kind of stuff slip, thinking they're right,
No
but
way.
like, that's toxic what you're doing. So, and I can't, and that's what I have to judge off of you, is these 50 minutes. So,
Got it.
I'm good. Now we're in a debrief, and then somebody brings that up. Now everybody's thinking about it. And they're like, man,
Yeah.
what if he does that to me and I hire him and he tries to go over my head and tries to do all this toxic stuff, So even like a little nugget of stuff, it may not be fair. It may not be truly who you are. Just make sure you're answering those questions like adequately, and say as safe as you can, and find examples. I don't want to say make up examples, but just try to find examples where, because if you make up examples and they try to ask you deeper questions, it could go bad.
Yeah.
So
I think
try to find the best examples for things like how you work with other people, how you manage conflict, when you had
Yes.
to learn something on your own without being pushed to push to do it. Like, you know, when did you have to learn a new technology on your own, and why, and what was it?
Hmm. Yeah. I
Right,
remember for my current company, the VP asked me, she's just like, so how do you learn new technologies? Like, so let's say you had to
right.
learn Go today. Like, how would you go about doing that?
Mm,
And of course, I answered it wonderfully because I prepared for the question. But I was just like, dang, I was thinking to myself, like, dang, if I didn't prepare for this question, how would I have answered
yeah,
it? Right? Like, understanding your learnings, how you learn and how
yeah,
you work and
right.
how you best communicate with your team and your
Yeah,
manager is
right,
so important to have to make sure that those qualities that you bring come across in the interview
cross,
because we're working, right? We're working. This is not a friendship. This is a work. This is a
work,
contractual
right,
agreement,
right.
right? So you have to make sure that those best skills shine through. And if you're leaving your former employer for bad reasons, do
Ooh,
not mention the bad reasons in the interview. As you heard Kelvin say, like if you mention
right.
that to one person, everybody's gonna know about
Right.
it.
Can
And
it spread.
like
The
don't do it.
channel can
It's a bad
sometimes
look.
it tries to stop that from happening, because sometimes we say, hey, it's not let this one thing bury the candidate. We'll try to
Mm,
stop it, but sometimes it can be things so bad like that. Like, why did they just leave?
mm,
That can be like it can be infectious to everybody, so
yeah,
make sure that you spin that in the bed. It's always, you can always spin the reason you're leaving pretty positive,
absolutely, absolutely. One
right?
thing I like to say, like if it was something with management, just say, honestly, the management style just doesn't fit with how I work best.
Right, you
And
gotta
then
learn.
you switch into how you work best. Like don't
Right,
spend a lot of time on why you're leaving because that's going to affect you because nobody wants to hear you talking badly about another manager because
negative, yeah. It's like I said earlier,
yeah,
keep the interview positive. Do not
yeah,
do not take it negative, because then they're gonna say, well, if he was like that, and if he
correct.
was like that there, we kind of got, and they might have some of the same things going on. So it goes back to the other end. Make sure you're asking them the right questions
Absolutely.
too. So
I, I
yeah,
think like one of the best reasons to pull, especially in this environment, is like honestly, I really want to work fully remote. Especially if you're interviewing at a remote company, that's valid to say. I
right,
want to work fully remote due to the panorama, and my
right,
company really wants us to come back on campus,
yeah.
and I don't feel comfortable doing that because it's going to impact my health. And
That's
what
a
I like about you, and then you go into what you like about the company, you gotta
right.
flip it. You gotta
Right.
flip it.
That's a perfect answer, because then it's like, okay,
Hmm.
well, I want to do that too. A lot of people want to do that. Kind of, you
Exactly.
don't give them, because a lot of times when they ask you why you're leaving, they're looking for a negative. That's that's one of those
Exactly.
questions where like you can't really, you're not like, they're not really gonna care about a good answer, unless maybe it's like, I'm looking for more challenge or something like that. Most of the time they are crying for a bad answer.
Information. Yeah. They want to
Right.
see how you answer the question.
Right.
Because
So
then that's
be
how you're going
careful.
to answer the question about them.
Right.
Like,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you right. Yeah.
okay. So, like, for career changers, so like my page is filled with career changers.
I love it.
Um,
I love it.
when when you're interviewing career changers specifically, let's say somebody's going from teaching to development, teaching to product, like what are you looking for in that person?
Mm,
Or like what even makes that person come across you as a manager? Because it has to go through a lot of steps
has to go
before it
through.
even gets to you.
Right. So I mean that probably depends team to team, company to company. Some companies, they have the filtering at like the HR level before it even gets to us, where
Yeah.
they'll filter out people, and we have to kind of fight. Like I had to fight as a manager. I had to tell the recruiter to say, "Hey, they do not need a computer science degree to come work on my team." But I
Oh
had
my
to
gosh.
say that. And so sometimes it's different companies have different things at the top HR levels where they're actually recruiting, and then we have recruiting partners, and it gets so many levels out that sometimes it's hard for me as the manager on the team even to make sure,
Mm.
like I have to really pry at it and say, hey, like they don't need a degree, so start sending people over with boot camp experience or interest or side projects, just a resume that, especially for entry level, like where we can take more of
Right?
a risk there. And so yeah, and yeah, like it's yeah, like that's one of the biggest problems. But for
So,
me, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
No, you can go ahead because what is specifically did you ask? I almost forgot. I got on that
I
tangent.
was just saying, like, for career changes, like, how do career changes come across your desk? Like,
Got you.
what do they have to do to, because a lot of people are struggling to even get an interview, right? They're
Right.
applying to 200, 200,
200.
500, 400 jobs, and they're not getting responses. And so, like, what I'm hearing is, like, at the HR level or the recruiting level, the filtering is happening there. And even though the person may be qualified for the role, they're
Right.
being filtered out because they don't meet whatever HR thinks they need to meet. I
Well,
don't
I'd
know.
say to that, I'd say that the industry is changing the other way, to where these filters are being broken down. But that's not helping anybody right now that's looking for a job. So I'll say that for people that are working to get into it, I think it's changing. I mean, I'd say explore all possibilities for getting a job. So
Okay,
you post up
so
all the time,
all
and
the
like,
time.
and like other people are looking for jobs, like especially on Twitter. People are like just literally just tweeting out stuff. So try to find different avenues to get your resume in. Look for referrals.
Mm,
Try to get direct referrals from people that are at these companies. You see somebody on Twitter is like, "Hey, I want to work at this company that you're at. Can you give me a referral?" A lot of times they will because they're gonna get paid if they
hey.
if you come in. So a lot of times they will. And like I know people, I posted a thing about Blind, and like people are like, "I hate Blind." Some people are like it's cool, and I know Blind got a lot of problems, but Blind there's a lot of referral sharing going on.
That's true.
You just get on there just
Yeah.
to do the referral sharing, just like, hey, can somebody give me some referrals, and then just get off. Like that can kind of help you get around it. And the only other way is really
What about reaching out to managers? Like, would you, and I've seen like people encourage people to reach out to managers after applying to a job. I'm not a manager, so like I can't really speak to that, but what do you think about that?
I would say if they express something somewhere that says that they're looking, then they're gonna love it if you hit them up. Because like on LinkedIn, you can put a little thing as a manager and say I'm hiring, and if they are,
Ah,
you can just message them. I know on LinkedIn you gotta have like some special stuff. You gotta either be connected first or something like that. But just connect with them and just reach out to them. Like it's I've had like that we've definitely hired people through messages, referrals, like LinkedIn
amazing.
messages. I've interviewed people through social media messages before. I don't know if I've hired
Amazing.
anybody yet. I almost got hired through somebody on here to Microsoft, but I decided not to go. So I mean, it's real. Like I literally was
100%.
just somebody saw my content and was just like, "Hey, I think you'd be good for this role," and I got into the pipeline without even applying. I didn't even apply.
Same. Yep.
Right. So yeah.
Same.
So like, use social media, use other avenues. If you're trying to still get in that traditional route, I mean, you still need to be filling out 100, 200 a day. Like I even had to do that. Like or whatever. But I'm not saying that number,
It's
but fill out as
crazy.
many as you can a day. It's a numbers game. It sucks. I had to do that 8 years ago, and it just haven't
Oh
changed.
my God. It's
Um,
crazy.
right.
It's
It's
exhausting.
exhausting. It is.
It's
Even like it's more
exhausting.
automated now, and it's still exhausting. Like a lot of times, a lot of sites got like these things where you can repost and redo it and
Yeah.
upload it automatically, and it still sucks. So
Yeah. I think one of my best sites, social media sites for hiring is absolutely Twitter.
yeah, it's
Like if
crazy.
you hate Insta, if you hate TikTok,
Yeah,
if you hate the LinkedIn, like get on Twitter. It is so low effort,
yeah,
and the exposure you get to managers and recruiters and people willing to share their knowledge,
yeah,
especially in tech, it's wild. And
yeah.
especially like Black tech Twitter, like it's wild. People are constantly
Constantly.
sharing knowledge and jobs and resources on Twitter, and I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it.
Me too, because I want to get more, like you said earlier, I want to get more people into the industry, and
For real, it's nice over
it's
here.
yeah, it is. It's nice, and I'm sad that like from like I think it's getting better now, but from like a child, I just never. It wasn't in my school. It wasn't like
Never,
people around me were
no.
like be a doctor, an engineer, or a lawyer. It was like like there's like three or four things they were saying to do to make make a good living, And like tech is just it's getting the salaries, the making the living are getting insane. So
Wow.
it's getting crazy. So and it's getting better and better as time goes on. So it's worth the effort. I know it's hard when you don't have the traditional degree, but as time goes on
Yeah.
and these traditional folks get out of the management positions and people like me start getting into them,
Right.
I truly believe it will change. But for now, I think you have to use non-traditional routes, ask for referrals, look for family members that are in some of the companies you want, even if they're not in the tech teams. If they're just in the company, it just gets your resume in the pipeline, it helps. And then,
Yeah.
just beef out your resume as much as possible. You don't have the degree, but try to just beef it out with as much experience as you can. Do some contract work, do some freelancing work, do side projects to try to really just add to your resume as much. Put a lot of keywords in your resume as well, like just like the names of keyword heavy, like the names of technology,
Languages and technologies.
right? Because then it can kind of help you on the programmatic
Yeah.
scanning side of your resume where your degree is kind of hurting you, the lack of degree is hurting you or whatever in the case. So
So on the point of resumes, I'm loving this chat. On the
oh,
point of
me too.
resumes, do you think people, especially non-traditional folks, my people who are here,
Yeah.
do you think we need to create new resume for each role? Like, do we need to, what is it, cater to each role? Or is like a general resume that pretty much covers most things for the jobs you're looking for? Is that okay?
That's a good question, man. And I don't want to give the wrong answer here. I would say maybe you have like 2 or 3 versions of your resumes for different pipelines, like slightly different pipelines
Mm,
going for different roles. But I feel like if you're going for a uh, entry level front end and you're trying to focus on React, then you probably just need one resume. Like I don't see why you need to have different resumes. Just try to make it as inclusive, I guess, as possible to cover different scenarios. I mean, I could see where maybe that could help you, but I don't want people putting in way too much effort and trying to like you're
it's so
spending
much
so much time
work.
changing your resume for every job, and then you say you do that 10 times and none of those 10 you even make it through the filter. Now you could have
Wasted
filled out like
energy.
50 applications and got 2 interviews where you only filled out 10 applications because you had to change your resume each time in between. So I say maybe like pre do the work. Like figure out what
Mm,
kind of
I agree.
jobs are out there and just do 10 resumes at the came out of college. I had like 3 different resumes because I was like, I'm full stack. I can't help it. I just like to do everything. So I was like applying for like a mobile job if I saw it. I was applying for front end job if I saw it, back end job. So I had a front end, back end, and mobile version of my resume that kind of
I
catered
like
to
that.
each. But I feel like if you're in the same stream, don't go too crazy.
I like that. I like that
Because
though.
I
So
mean,
like if you're I like that though. If you're full stack, have a front end resume that's specifically to front end, a back end resume
yeah,
that's specific to back end, and a
right,
full stack resume that has all the
right.
skills.
Out that has
I
everything.
think that's a good tactic. I think that's a good idea.
If you're interested in a role, especially if you're like, I just want to get a shot and I'm just trying to get my foot in the door, where you're more willing. As you grow in your career, you're gonna start getting picky. So
Yeah, because you have more
then
options.
you just have one res. I just got one resume now. I'm like, I know what I want to do. So I'm just like, but like when you're first starting out, like you really do. Once you get that first job, it's gonna take a while sometimes, but once you get
That's
that
it.
first one, you
That's
are
it.
good. I promise you are good. Once you get that
Like for
first job,
real.
clam, you're gonna start getting. They're gonna start reaching out to you. You don't even have to
Constantly.
reach out anymore. So
I constantly get messages on LinkedIn.
right,
Constantly. Like ever since I got like 6 months of experience in my first role,
yep.
constantly get messages on LinkedIn.
Get worse. It's gonna get worse. It's gonna get worse because they like if the demand is high, but the industry still got some like fabricated bull
Of
crap.
course.
Like some people
But I
still
think
look. Yeah.
You know, honestly, Kelvin, I think about it like this: all industries have fabricated bullcrap, right?
You're right.
But
You're right. You're
but
right.
at least over here,
Here.
we are well paid and taken care of to
Right.
deal with the fabricated bullcrap.
Right. That's true.
So I think that's how I look at it.
Right.
That's how I look at it.
And just guys, keep trying. I know if even if you don't, if it's hard to get your resume through, keep trying, because once you get that one, and you get there, and you get 6 months, a year, 2 years, like you're
Hmm.
gonna do anything you want to do after that, pretty much. Like you're gonna be able to, if you say, okay, I'm not really interested in, I took this back end role just to get in it, but I'm more interested in the front end. You're gonna have
It's still
opportunity,
gonna be easier for you
right?
to move
Way
around.
easier than it was. Like you're
Like,
gonna be better learner.
yeah,
Your skills are gonna transfer over. You maybe get an opportunity at the company you're at to change over and then leave, or you maybe
absolutely.
so. But
Like,
just keep
let me
doing
tell you, like, I was so scared to leave my first job. Because, you know, it was the first
it.
job. And
Yeah.
it was like, am I really thinking about leaving? But when I just looked into my LinkedIn DMs, responded to some recruiters, and then I applied for this one. I applied for like a few roles with
Yeah.
like LinkedIn Quick Apply because I was just like, oh, let me test the waters.
Waters.
So
Yeah.
like one Friday, I just like applied to a few roles with Quick Apply, and like over the weekend,
Yeah.
seven
Crazy.
interview requests. I think I applied to like 12 jobs.
Crazy.
Seven interview requests, and then the rest of the interviews came like the following week, and I was just like, "What is this? Like,
Yeah.
this is how tech people are living."
Yeah.
I need more Black people and more people of color to come on
Man,
this side.
that is the mission. Like, please, like guys, like it is good over here. Like, even if you don't like programming, if you don't
Yeah,
like what you're doing now, just come over here and not like this over here. Because I'm
for
telling you,
real,
it's
for
probably
real,
better. It's probably better. I
and
don't know
and
for
a little
sure.
easier, and
It's
a little
probably
easier.
easier. It's probably easier crap to deal with. So and you're probably going to have a higher ceiling compensation wise.
Hmm.
I think it's only gonna. I mean, look at the industry and what we got going on out here. Look at if you're in the stocks. Look at the stocks and which stocks are the strongest performers consistently. It's all tech industry, tech companies. These tech companies, like 50 years ago, it was like these washing machine companies and Coca-Cola
Yeah,
and all these in Walmart. And now these tech companies have came in the last 20 years and surpassed all of them in like a relatively
that's so
short time.
true.
So this is like, that's why they're able to pay this much. That's why they're able to give all this stock out, to for total compensation. That's why they're able to do these things, because it's just a lot of money in tech in general. So, if you look, it depends on what you're looking for. You're looking for an easier work life type of thing, or looking for an occupation you like a lot better, or you're looking for more compensation. It is a job, so I don't shy away from talking about compensation. And like, if it's just for
Right?
you to, right, like no point. Like,
Shoot.
yeah,
I've been poor. Okay,
yeah,
I have
right,
been poor. It is hard being poor.
yeah,
Gas is almost $4. It's about to be
right,
$6. Like,
right,
so much is happening in the world. Food is so expensive. How are
right,
we supposed to live? Rent
right.
is over $2,000
Right, man. Man.
in
I filled up my
Georgia.
tank and
Rent
I
is
was
over
like,
two
"What the
thousand
heck is
dollars.
this?" I was like, "This is
So it's
crazy."
like, how are we supposed to live if we're not earning a good living? Like,
Right.
why you have to take your career into your own hands and go after it.
Yeah.
Like for real. And so like I see some questions in the little question sticker
Yeah.
thing. So let's answer some of those. And I saw something about a resume is simple better. I personally think a simpler formatted resume is a lot better. Like just make it left aligned and make it nice and easy for the person to read it.
Yeah.
What
And
do you think?
don't make it crazy where a bot can't read
Mm-mm.
it. 'Cause,
Yeah. That's
right.
true. Simpler is better. Use a site like Credle. I like Credle because it's easy to use. It just formats your resume in one page and it's I think ATS optimized, but I don't even know anything about that stuff. So don't quote me. I don't know. I'm not a recruiter. But simpler is better, I think.
Yeah, I think. And don't go over 2 pages. Like 2 pages max. If you can
Yeah.
do it on one page, just do it on one page. Do not go over 2 pages. It will not get read. Uh,
Especially for entry level, like
Yeah, for entry
one
level mine.
page.
So mine is 2 pages, but I mean, I've been in the industry for a long time,
Yeah.
so I just had a lot on there. But please, but I kept
Yeah.
it clear, concise. Like I did sections, but I still made it like bot friendly or like was it crawler friendly and all of that stuff. So
Yeah.
right, that was
Amazing.
better.
Let's see. Well, we answered Denita's question about catering to each job. How would you practice, especially for behavioral interviews?
Behavioral interview questions. How would you practice? So those are actually easier to practice with somebody real. Like you need to find the questions, but I mean, search the internet. They're everywhere. They're like people got them in GitHub repos. I think they're behavioral questions on LeetCode even. I think. I mean, they're all over the place. Like, I think Amazon actually just got them on their website for like the interview. They have a whole website for the interview process, and they literally have their principles on there, so you can learn what they are. But this is the one thing I want to say about this: every company, I think it's the STAR method, but I don't even like to go through the STAR method. When you answer these types of questions, you need to stir up the situation. You need to make sure you have time to answer the question concisely. So don't talk too much about the situation, but you need to describe what the scenario was, what was the task to be done, and then what was I don't even know what the STAR method goes, but you need to make sure you like talk about the situation, talk about what your action was in the situation, and talk about what the result was. Make sure you do those three pieces, because what I see in interviews, and I know I'm a big talker, but what I see happen in interviews, when I ask them a behavioral question, I say, hey, how did you solve a big problem that you're proud of? And they spend 10 minutes talking about, yeah, it was in Node.js, and we had to do this Node.js project because we had to help school buses get their kids picked up faster. And they talk about the whole situation so long that they don't get to what they did, and more importantly, what the result was of them doing it, so that they can answer the question. So I would practice by look up STAR method. I'm sorry, I don't know it. I don't actually use it because I know how to answer the questions, but its STAR method is a way to, it's like situation, task, action, and result. It's something like that. Yeah, I can't remember what the T and the A mean, but
I don't
it's definitely
know.
like that. Yeah. So
I think one thing I like to do when it comes to behavioral questions is just have, so what I would do is I would answer those questions ahead of time. Like I
yeah,
have a Notion doc, or you can use a Google Doc, and
right.
I look up behavioral question and I just plug some music in and I just answer them to the best of my ability. That way I can review the responses that I think I would have. And
Right.
even in the interview, my interviewers don't know this, but I have Zoom on half of the screen, and I
Mm-hmm.
have my little notebook
Yeah.
with my responses on
I
another
hadn't
half of the
interviewed in a long
screen.
time, but I interviewed from these remote things, and I was like, dang, it's some y'all got it easy, man. Some hacks you can do now. You
Listen,
can have
I
all
have
kind of stuff on
notes
the
on
screen,
one
man.
side and I got Zoom on one side,
Yeah,
and I'm taking notes and I'm looking at
right,
you and I'm typing and I'm
right,
like glancing over at my little responses that I type up ahead of time, and I'm
right.
regurgitating that response
Yeah,
because when you prepare those responses, especially for those
come out
common
good prepared.
questions, when
Yeah,
you prepare for those common questions, you come across more confidently
yeah.
because you already have
You
the
won't be
answers.
making mistakes and getting stuck,
Yeah,
taking too long on one part and taking too.
yeah.
Right,
So
right.
create a Google Doc, list out, look up some behavioral questions, Google, GitHub, all the things that Kelvin said. YouTube is great because people actually
Mm-hmm.
tell you how to answer those questions.
Mm-hmm.
Write down your responses
Oh yeah,
and
YouTube.
this, side by side in the Zoom meeting, like what I do. I should probably do a video on that because I love it.
Yeah,
It helps me so much.
yeah.
But yeah, spend the time to answer those questions because, like Kelvin said, it's not just about the technical, it's about your personality,
Yeah.
okay? What do
Yeah.
you bring to the table?
I'm gonna say this one thing. It does, like, you can be the best. I've worked with so many great devs. Technically, they could just code their butt off. They could do everything by themselves. But some of them were so toxic that they had to be
Mm,
isolated away from the rest of the team, where they couldn't work together with other members, which great drastically decreased their effectiveness on the team and for the company, because no one wanted to work with them. They were like, man, this dude
mm.
sucks. He's, they use worse words than that, a lot of times. And
Yes.
it doesn't matter how good a dev you are if if the I'm not saying, anybody here is like that, but I'm saying if the interviewer thinks you're like that because they're going to have gotten burnt in the past by somebody like that, if they get any inkling that you are like that, then, or that you can't,
Yeah.
work with you, then, that's kind of like worst case, but I'm just saying, like, that's why it matters so much. That's why these companies, even big as Amazon, spend time asking behavioral questions. So,
Yeah. Yeah. I don't have follow up, but yeah. If you're toxic, nobody's gonna work with you.
no, for sure. It doesn't matter how, like, people, because I think a lot of times, a lot of devs, especially the old school dev, now the industry is newer and we got a lot more people coming in, but like the old school stereotypical dev is like doesn't have good social skills, and every time you ask them a question, they just give like a stoic answer and da 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 da, which is fine. You can have your own personality, but like you need to be professional and you need to work with people. You need to make it easy for people to work with you no matter what. Even if
Yes.
you don't have to make friends, you don't have to be friendly with people. I'm not saying that you need to be friendly, but I'm not saying you have to be friends and you have to overdo it, but you can't go the other direction and just be to the point where people don't even want to approach you. So,
Yeah, because at the end of the day, people work with people. That's it.
right, people, yeah. Oh, so
So Lydia says, "Our follow-up thank you notes after an interview worth it?"
follow
Like
up.
thank you emails, like those thank you emails.
Yeah, I think they're worth it. I think they're worth it. They don't always work. I've tried it. Sometimes they work. I've tried it where it worked. Like the job I got now, I did it for it. And I don't know if it worked or if the interview just worked or what. I think it's worth it. I think it's worth it. I mean, I don't
Thank you.
think it hurts. Um, but, I know some people
Thank you.
got reasons for why you wouldn't do it, but I
I
just
don't
don't,
think it hurts.
yeah, I don't
I
see
don't
why
think it
you wouldn't.
hurts.
All right. Why
I don't
not?
know. Yeah, I don't think it hurts. Like my job that I have now too, I did send a thank you note to like all the panels and the managers, all the people. I don't know. It's like you can look up a template, copy paste their names and the company and something that you spoke about that you thought was great.
Right.
That's why it's important to take notes in interviews. I know some people feel like we shouldn't be taking notes, but the interviewer is taking notes, so why shouldn't the interviewee take notes? Right? We're
Right.
interviewing them as well,
Right.
and
And
so
you might
I
need
don't
that
think
for
it. I
another
don't think it hurts.
interview if you don't get this one, or you might,
Exactly.
yeah, like you just,
Exactly.
right.
I
It should
write
be a
down
learning.
all the questions, all the questions they ask me.
Oh yeah, for sure, for sure.
So yeah, I don't think it hurts, Lydia. I think it's easy enough to send like an email after the
Right.
interview.
Yeah. I think it's
Okay.
good. Oh, so
Yeah. So now that you're an engineering manager, what percentage of time, if any, do you spend coding? Great
that's a
question.
great question, man. That's a great question. I think this is different for different teams and then also different for different companies. Me personally, I probably say I don't spend a lot of time coding. I spend maybe like 10% of the time coding. I still
Mm-hmm.
do a good amount of architecting and solution design, but it's not actually coding. So it's like I'm figuring out the pieces, figuring out the technologies we should use, the languages we should use, how to fit different pieces of our system together, giving advice, doing code reviews. But becoming an engineering manager has taught me that one, a lot you're not gonna be able to do both a lot of the time. So you're going to be a manager, and you're gonna have to shift your mind from being the one doing the work to figuring out how to help the developers
Mm.
be more successful and help your team get better processes. So let's say, for instance, where at one time I was coding the API, at this time I'm kind of driving forward the standards of the API as a manager, and to making sure that our team is developing it. Our sprints are going correctly. The team is, we're not having regression in things we're implementing. We're following best practices. Other, senior members of the team will help with that, but it's up to you as a manager to help with that as well. But for the big part of management is managing the stakeholders. So I am the shield sometimes. I am the entryway sometimes to my team, from support, from sales, from my
Yeah.
managers, from other teams, from how do I put things on the right teams? I mean, on the right people on my team to not overwhelm them, and also make them feel like they're progressing. It's a tough job because just because somebody's best for bugs, they might not want to work on bugs all the time. So you have to manage that as a manager, but then you got the company asking you to do all this stuff that you got to get done. But then you're trying to balance morale, and you're trying to make sure people are paid well if they ask for raises, and you're trying to make sure they're getting promoted. And so all of that extra time, there's no way you're going to just be a full-time coder and a full-time manager. So in a lot of roles. Now, some teams are different. Some people have some hybrid stuff going on, but I think you got to be careful with that, because it could turn you into a bad manager where you're just coding, but your team is looking to you like, hey man, I need a raise, or hey man, I don't want to work on this project anymore. I want to work on a different project. And hey man, like our sprints we've been missing our sprint velocity. We've been missing our sprint goals. And like, how can we, I got too much work on me. I'm off tomorrow. Like I can't do all this work. So like, it's just a lot of different things you have to handle as a manager. Do I miss the coding? Yes. So it will be probably a update coming soon about Kelvin's KG's management experience and what my future will be. that's gonna be a new surprise. But right now I'm still the manager, and I'm enjoying it, because it's like I've gotten so much reward because I've been a individual contributor before. And just, man, getting people raises and like seeing their faces, and then or seeing them finish a project and the rest of the company give them praise, or seeing our team release some new feature and just being the one who drives it forward. Like you get your success through your people, because you're a people manager, you're a decision maker at that point. It's been really rewarding, and I see why people love it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
But being a manager sounds exhausting.
Some people are like, man, they can't wait to get away from coding, and they go into management, and they just get away from coding, but they love technology, and they love, driving technology and processes and teams and stuff like that. So it's a great route to go. If you don't like the coding part, you want to get in the industry, you code your way up into a management role, and then you just go down that track. There's a lot of money in that track, because you can get all the way to CTO in the management track.
I don't know. I think eventually, I'm slowly moving away from the coding. But definitely not up to management. I think maybe like into product or something adjacent.
Too. A lot of programmers will move to product. Yeah,
something adjacent, because I don't want the stress of dealing with people's pay and time and no.
Gonna be a new update from KG coming soon about all that. So, I promise you, it's not a secret, but yeah, I got a chance that you're gonna get to. Most companies have a fork where it's like you get to like a level 3 or a level 2 or 3, and then you'll be able to go into an engineering management position, or you'll be able to go into like a principal staff engineer, and then after that is staff 2, and then there's like distinguished engineer, and that's kind of the equal path of the management, like director, engineering manager. And then some people will say like they'll get to SD2, and they're like, man, I kind of like what the product management is doing. I like
that's me.
Right. Yeah. So you make a pivot to product manager, and then they have their own track that goes up. All of them make a lot of money, so it's the same.
Which is also why like I kind of pivoted into DevRel, right? It's like sometimes coding, a lot of content, and I love it.
Yeah.
So like far so good.
And dev that's beautiful. I like that.
Yeah. Yeah. So like I'm hoping to get into more DevRel things that has less coding. Coding is great, but man,
you'll be really good at that. You can be really good at that. Like I would love to do that at my company. I like what I'm doing now, so I probably wouldn't pivot from what we're working on now. But I think at some point I do want to do a DevRel role somewhere.
It's fun. It's fun.
Yeah.
And listen, KV, these roles pay. Okay, they pay. And there are a lot of roles out there right now.
Yeah. Oh, somebody's.
Any suggestions for those that are attempting to make an internal change? That is from going from support to a developer.
Oh, dang, that's a good question. I've had a couple people on my team that came from support to dev. It's a good question. I think that's an easier move, and I'm glad that people are even thinking of that, because what a lot of times happens, people get in a bad space and then they just like, I want to leave or I want to go to another company, and they don't look at what's in their company. So to even be looking and considering that, I think is a great option. You still need to prepare and you still need to build the case. But I think in my experience, what I've seen, it's a lot easier than trying to come in from the inside when you're already in.
Yeah.
It's a lot easier. It's more discussion based. And a lot of people we've hired from other teams, it's just literally been, they're not even interviews. They're more like discussions, or the person has already been starting to do development a little bit before they took the role. So my best suggestion is work with your management, find another team that you want to work with, and try to figure out how they let your manager know. If you haven't been talking about it, you need to let your manager know that you want to do this. Like, because, and it's scary, I know, but you have to take the reins in your career. I had to learn this the hard way. It was a lot of times I was scared to say stuff when I should have. Take reins of your career. Let your manager know that I want to transition here into the dev team role. How can I do this? And see where there's opportunities for you to start, maybe using 10% of your time at first, mentoring with somebody, like taking on small tasks from that team and like building it up to the point where you're like doing maybe like 50% and you're like already working for them. And I'm telling you, they're going to hire you so fast when it's time, because they're going to be like, okay, he already knows, or she already knows the company domain, which is a big part when you're joining a new company.
Yep.
There's a lot of stuff to learn
Huge part.
that's nowhere else. And they've already been doing a couple of tasks for us. I can visualize how they can help our team if they were 100% on our team. That would be the biggest suggestion for me. Work with your manager to figure out how you can do a slow transition where you start to, especially if you don't have any experience and you don't have time to go out and do a boot camp and do a lot of other things. If you don't do a boot camp and you don't do anything like that, you're gonna have to do a lot of dedicated study and researching and learning. It is hard. So I would also suggest probably doing some sort of boot camp, schooling, boot camp, some sort of way to get you got to become a programmer. And that's a whole separate question. You know what I mean? How you want to enter the knowledge of being a programmer. But I'd say as you're trying to make the move, try to work with another team and figure out with your manager how you can kind of split your time a little bit to get to another team, because you might need to prove it first that you can do it. But it's better than interviewing. I promise you that.
That is such great advice.
And trying to learn lead code and doing all that stuff. So
that is such great advice.
Right.
Because you're already in the company.
You're already in the company.
That's such great advice.
Yeah. So our portfolio is important when looking for your second or third position. Oh, good question. I don't know. Like, to me, they're definitely not as important. I think because, so with second or third position, I think it depends on how long you've been at your first position. Maybe I think they are important, but I just think they're not as important as your experience. Like, as far as I've seen, and in my company, like, they're gonna look at your experience. Like, every time somebody looks at a resume, they look at your experience every time. Now, I know a lot of people that skip the portfolio sometimes. When they get enough from the experience in the experience section, they'll skip the portfolio. Now, I'm not saying it's not important, but I just think once you start to build up, especially when you start getting to your third and you've been, around a couple years, 3 or 4 years, then they're gonna really be asking you in the interview about your experience. What were you doing at your last company? What they're gonna ask you for the behavior questions. They're gonna ask you questions about in the work environment what you were doing, to answer these behavioral questions. But I still think it's important to have a portfolio. But I think what happens once you get like 5 or 6 years, you don't even have. Some people just don't work outside of their job once they get the job, and they just don't do anything in the portfolio. I know, Dev, I'm not like that because I'm crazy and I do my job. And you guys see me posting stuff. Some of you that maybe follow me see me posting stuff about the stuff I'm doing at home. But I'm not. Everybody isn't like that. Some people, they keep their work in their work, and they do a lot of programming in their work, and when they're at home they have other hobbies. They do
That's
basketball.
me. I
Yeah,
know
yeah,
that
something
kind.
else. And so by the time you get to 3 or 4 years, you may not have a portfolio. And maybe I'm answering the question wrong, but like I'm thinking of a portfolio as like side projects and
Yeah, of
some
course.
sites you may have up or something like that. Some devs will get. I know devs, man, getting like going to big companies or going to medium companies and getting crazy pay, and they don't have nothing outside of
Hmm.
they just have a solid work experience. And that's why these recruiters hit you up crazy when they see you at these companies for 3 or 4 years. They're like, man,
Hmm.
this is ripe for the picking. Because and then also like your roles and stuff are gonna work off your years of experience. Like
That's
it's
true.
just it's SDE1, SDE2, or software developer 1, 2, and 3. Staff, is usually typically looking for like 8 years or something like that. So
Yeah,
I'm
I
not.
don't
It
know.
means something, but I'm just saying the experience means just maybe that changes, but experience means so much more, right? After a certain point, I feel like.
For me, it's so difficult to like code outside of work. Like
Yeah.
I'm working like 8, 10 hours sometimes,
Right.
and it's exhausting. I don't
Exhausting.
want to do it. I don't
Want
want
to
to
do it,
do
or I
it,
don't think you should if you
and
don't think
I
that's
don't do it. I just make funny videos.
right. Right. Yeah. And so it's like you don't need to. You don't need to. So I feel like once you got that experience, I feel like the portfolio thing is a way to get some level of experience and show some level of what you've been doing when you have a lack of experience on your resume. I feel like it's way more important than you have to have it, because what else you
Yeah.
put on a resume? It's just gonna be a paper. Like it's just gonna be your name, address on it. So I just saying that it means so much more then, because it's filling up a gap that you have. But once you're able to kind of fill it up with 2 jobs, like you can almost fill it out, and
Yep.
you can put so much detail about what you did in the job and you did professionally. And I think it's still a stigma where if they're comparing your professional work to your out of work, they're going to, especially if you didn't productize the portfolio stuff, they're going to just look at your work. And they're going to say, okay, he or she didn't productize this. So they didn't get to the level of support that we need. Like we talked about earlier, handling bugs, dealing with, customer requests, uh, deploying it, handling the scale when it scales up and has
Mhm.
many users. If your portfolio stuff don't have any users, then the interviewers looking at that thing you did at Coca-Cola, your last job where you had to support 3 million
That's
users a
true.
day on the website. So it's just kind of different, I guess.
One thing I'll say with the portfolio stuff, like I don't think you need a portfolio for your second or third role. And as Kelvin says, it depends on how long you were in that first
Yeah,
role. But it's like if you work with a product manager in your first role, become friends with your product manager because they have all the numbers,
ooh,
right? They know how many people we're supporting, they know how many bugs.
yeah,
Like, they have all the quantitative data that you need to put on your resume. And
yeah.
so, like, ask them questions about the product, ask them questions about the number of users, like the number of monthly users, daily users, the number of bugs that
That's
like ask them all those questions so you can put on
yeah.
your resume.
Right. Add it to the resume. Like numbers. Data is king in all
Yeah, on
industries,
your resume.
especially
Yeah.
this. And then on a resume, 100%. So
All right, so we're going to answer a few more questions. I
okay.
just realized it is after 12.
Yeah, it's a long time.
Um,
I'm a long talker, but like I just like to help. Hopefully, if it can help one person, man.
So
So
we're gonna answer a few more. I know there are quite a few questions in here, so we're gonna answer a few more, maybe like three more.
yeah.
So like, how many hours outside of work did you dedicate to expanding your coding skills? This is such a
Okay.
great question.
That's a great question. So it's gonna be different what I do and what I suggest because I'm crazy. So I got a lot of goals. I have a personal goal to be, I'm building up my brand on here and on other social media channels. And I have my ultimate goal is to be a tech entrepreneur. Right now
Okay.
I'm working up the corporate ladder. So I got eggs in multiple baskets, but eventually I do want to pivot and start, I do have my own kind of like side business where I do development, and those are the projects you see me posting but I eventually want to pivot out of kind of the general workforce and try my hand at entrepreneurship and maybe develop some software as a service products and, something, to just be, tech entrepreneur and a serial entrepreneur where I, make different products and support the industry. So for me, I spend a lot of hours outside of work doing coding, probably almost every day, maybe at least 2 or 3 hours. Not every day. I usually skip the weekends, and I usually maybe take 2 days off a week, but at least like 3 or 4 days a week, I spend maybe 2 to 3 hours either learning or working on a project and learning while I'm working on it. But that's just because I have like clients outside of work that I work on, and I have learning I have to do to support those projects. What I would say for a normal person that is,
Yes.
it depends on what your goals are. It depends on what your goals are. Like, if I would say, it depends on what weak areas you are, but I would definitely say you need to keep your leak coding up if you have any chance that you think you're gonna need it again. So try to practice that at least a couple times a week. Just do one or two problems, and then try to learn something new that you think can help you either at your job now or help you be more marketable in the industry. I would say I wouldn't spend more than like an hour or two on it in a day that you decide to do it, and I wouldn't do it every day of the week. Everybody's lives is different. I would try to get your job to help you do it, because these jobs need to do a better job of training us. A lot of times they get bad at it and get so busy at these jobs that they don't. But I would try to push for it at your job with your manager to give you time within your job. That's a hack to be able to go
Listen,
learn.
listen, Kelvin. I schedule when I was in a development role, I would schedule like an hour and a half on my calendar every day, or like most days, where I'm just learning. I'm just learning. I'm not working. I'm learning. Okay, learn on the job is my advice, and use
That's
your
why I
after
went to
job
that, because I was
hours.
like,
Yeah,
I
learn
actually
on the
really,
job.
depending on who you are, like, I think it's absolutely 100% healthy if you just don't do nothing outside of your job. Because sometimes
Listen,
you
it's
need to do
exhausting.
something else, and you have other things. You got family, you might have, a big family, might have a spouse, a partner. You might have other hobbies that you like, music or something, or exercise. You
Yeah.
need to exercise no matter what. So it takes time to, like, so I have my time really balanced out. I have like exercise time. I have a couple hours I do my side projects. I have content creation time. It takes a long freaking time. And then I have my wife, I have my family time. I do a lot of stuff with my family. So my time is really like split up, but I make sure that coding time does not interfere with those other times. And for some people, that means coding time outside of work is 0. And that is fine. So I would say find out if you can't get it in at work, if you have no way to get them to help you get it in at work, try to I wouldn't say more than like a couple hours, and I would say
Yeah,
maybe a few times a week. I just wouldn't go more than
absolutely.
that. Unless you're like interview prepping,
Absolutely.
going crazy trying to do lead code or
Yeah.
something. You got a regular job, enjoy the fruits of your labor getting that job. And when it's
Listen,
time to interview again, then you can hop back on it
and
crazy.
I think especially as junior engineers, our role is to learn.
Yeah.
So learn, okay? Like I'm not a proponent of like working until you die.
Die.
No.
Yeah. Right.
No, no, no. I'm like, work your job,
Work
close
smart.
the computer, and go do something.
Right.
Like, try to study during the work hours, even if it's an hour. An hour isn't going to kill anybody, especially like on Fridays, because
Yeah.
typically Fridays are slow days. So maybe you can make like Friday morning for like an hour, 2 hours, like
Learn.
study time. You'll just like learn something. But
Right. Yeah.
I don't know,
I would
Kelvin.
say
I
do that.
don't
Yeah, I agree with you there
know.
completely. And I didn't even really think about that when she asked it. I just kind of talked my way through it, and then you said
Oh
it.
yeah, of
Try
course.
to hack it into your job. They should be allowing that, and especially if it has any relation to something that you're doing, they should be
Hmm.
loving that you're asking them to do that. And even if it
Hmm.
doesn't, they should be providing a space, kind of a safe and ample space where you're They should be paying for this stuff, honestly. Paying for some sort of
100%.
yeah.
100%. Okay, so we're gonna answer one more
One more,
question.
yeah.
Question, one more question, but then I'm gonna ask one question, and then Kelvin's gonna answer one more question.
Cool.
Kelvin, when it comes to the money and interviews, okay,
Ooh,
how do we talk about money as candidates? Like, it is so intimidating.
hard.
It is so intimidating. So, like, how do we effectively negotiate our salaries? Because most times we're not going to even be talking to you as a manager. We're going to be talking to the
The
recruiter.
recruiter, yeah.
So, like, how do we do it? Like,
Man, that is a good question. So it's a lot of factors that go into it, and it changes whether you're going for your first job or you're going for your second job where you have kind of a base. But you can kind of use it depends on where industry you're coming from. If you're coming from the point where like you were in an industry where the pay is so much less,
mm,
ooh, like so I guess maybe my advice would be the same, but be careful about mentioning your. They're going to ask you a lot of times. The different
mhm.
states have different rules. Sometimes they're not allowed to ask you, but they're going to ask you what your salary is now, even if you're coming from another industry. And
Isn't that an illegal question to ask?
I,
Or
in some, I think I looked it up. I think in some states it's illegal to ask, but in Georgia they ask it for sure. I've got asked it every single interview or every single point we get to that point in the interview. I've gotten asked
it's
every
like
time.
none of your business.
Yeah, and I choose not to do it. You have to be careful because when you don't do it either. So like if you do it, you can get lowballed. That's just they're just like these companies. They're trying to pay you as least as possible, and just have to be
Right.
real. There, they're trying to pay you as least as possible. So if their budget says they got 80K for a dev, and you said you just came from your job making 40, they're gonna think
Mm,
they're doing you a favor giving you 50 or 60 when they were gonna
mm,
anybody 80 or even more than that because that's like it's a range that they're usually having for the role. So what I usually do is when they ask that, I either say I want to talk about that later in the process, or I say what is y'all budget for this role so we don't waste time before we move forward. Sometimes they won't tell you the budget, sometimes they will. The disadvantage to not giving them your salary if it's high is that you may get lowballed later and you may waste time going through 4 or 5 interviews, get to the end,
mm-hmm.
and they're like, this is lower than what I'm making now. And so, especially when you get later in your career. But when you're first getting in, most likely, unless you're coming from like, unless you're changing careers from like being like a, I don't know, a surgeon, a brain surgeon or something, I don't know, that's been in the industry for a long time, you're most likely going to be getting a jump in salary. So it's better to avoid mentioning whoever the weakest person in this situation in the negotiation who's mentioned the salary first. That's just sad to say.
That's true. Yeah.
That's the weakest person.
I think I'm gonna plan a salary negotiation session. I'm gonna find somebody
Great.
and plan a salary because talking about money, it's so difficult.
Or
Like
because you don't want to seem
especially,
greedy, but at the same time, you don't want to
yeah,
get ran over. You don't want to get ran
but
over
it's just
by the company.
like, yeah, it's just like as someone who grew up very poor and then worked as a social worker and
Mhm.
also was poor and broke, it's just like I feel like a lot of times I need to work on my money mindset when
Mhm.
it comes to technical salary negotiation because the money is wild out here.
Right.
Um,
Wow.
and a lot of times we can feel like as career changes, like we don't deserve it.
Deserve it.
Meanwhile, the job is budgeted at
Budgeted.
130,000.
I'm
You
paying
know,
somebody. They're gonna feel like they did. It's somebody's job. Somebody
yeah,
will get a pat on the back if they cheat you out of some money. I'm trying to put it the best
absolutely.
way as possible. They will get a pat on the back. They will say, this role we saved 20, 30K and we offered this for 90,000 when it's supposed to be 120,000. And so you gotta
Hmm.
kind of like don't feel, know your value in the market. Do use your, there's a lot of tools now, blind, as bad as everybody hates it. Some people do Glassdoor, levels. I think it's levels.fyi is a really good one to look at the different salaries. Know your years of experience. You have to look at your location too. So don't get
Yep.
confused if you're living in Atlanta, Georgia versus,
Yep.
Silicon Valley or, San Francisco or something. Its salaries are much different and the cost of living is much different for that.
Yes.
So be careful with that, but try to use these tools to figure out what's your value and get a number in your head and stick strong on that but I just wouldn't mention a number unless you really, you know, you maybe you're in a more desperate situation and you just really want to get the job. You don't want to mess it up. I don't want to stop anybody from doing that, but know your worth. And I would avoid talking about the number until you get into a position where they're telling you the number, and then you're able to say, oh, that's too high. If it's too high, then you're taking it. But if it's too low, then you'll be able to kind of like work with them to get it to where you are. And I want to add this one thing, and we can move on. Remember that often your strongest point of negotiation is when you come into a job and when you leave a job. So as you're at the job, the raises that you may be surprised at the raises you get, and it depends team to team, company to company, but the raises you get while you're at a job will not compare to the jump you get when you change jobs and when you are about to leave and they like try to counter offer or something like that because you're about to leave. They are prioritizing hiring people in this crazy market, so they're giving these crazy salaries. So the people at the companies, unfortunately, is something all of us are trying to fight, but the people at these companies, unfortunately, are going to prioritize that, and you're not going to get as big jumps. You're not going to have as much negotiating power. You're sitting in the company, and they're like, we already got you. You don't have anything to negotiate with unless you're about to leave and you have another offer you can negotiate with, or you're coming in and you can say, and you might have another offer that, you know, you're choosing from or whatever. So keep that in mind to get the most that you can when you're coming in. Don't take anything you're not comfortable with, because you could be stuck like feeling like you're not making as much as you want to for a long time. And don't let the promises of a we'll catch you up and all of that stuff, like I would be careful about using that as like having, you know, depending on that too much. Like if you're not comfortable when you're coming in, that's not a good feeling to be in. You should be comfortable coming in with whatever you're getting.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's really good advice. I don't have anything else to add.
yeah,
Just like watch out for the salary negotiation session. I'm gonna put one together so we can talk about money, because it's so important to know how to talk about money confidently.
Question.
Yeah. So final question for the live. And don't worry if you missed the beginning of the live. I save all these lives all the time so you can watch them on my page.
I need to copy this.
So final question is, as an interviewer, what do you look for on a resume from someone new to tech with limited certifications or they're self-taught? That is like Udemy, Pluralsight, all that stuff. Like, what do you look for on a resume as an interviewer? For someone who's new to tech,
Completely new to tech, I would say, I mean, you got to pad your resume out with something. So, I mean, don't be afraid to just put, you know, if you say limited certifications, whatever you got, put on there. You know what I mean? Like,
real.
Right. Yeah, put it on there. In that case, though, I would really suggest that you start doing projects like and try to do the best. You know, time is limited. Interviewing takes a lot of time. Doing projects takes a lot of time. Manage your time wisely. If you're in a position where you have a lot of time, then you really have no excuse. If you're in a position where you're still in your old career and you don't have a lot of time, then try to manage your time wisely to do the most real productized products or projects you can do that will, like, if you're able to put up and say, I got this contract with like I got a contract with Mercedes-Benz one time to do an app. We just asked them, and I was able to put that on my resume as like I had a contract, a short-term contract with Mercedes-Benz to do their it was one dealership we did it for, to do their mobile app. That looks so good on, especially when you don't have a degree or you don't have boot camps or you don't have certifications or anything like that. That looks so good. So ask your family members, you know, you probably know somebody, ask around on social media. You know, you might have to do a project for free, but just make sure you know, get a contract together and try to do it as efficiently as possible. It goes a long way if you have the time to do it. Worst case, just look around the internet. There's so many resources, YouTube and all these different resources on like side projects to do that you can build your portfolio with, and focus on quality and not quantity. Like, it's cool to have a bunch of stuff on there, but a bunch of just GitHub things you forked from some other person's GitHub, you can quantity is not a problem. You can fork a bunch of projects and change the names and stuff on it and say you got, like, I've seen that done before with some resumes, and
That's wild.
we can see right through it, you know. So just try to do the most official and do your own projects. Like, make your own projects up. Like, if you know you like, man, I wish I had an app for this. Just try to go make our website for this. Or I wish I had a little one-page website that just do this calculation for me. Just do it yourself and just have people using it, you know? So
Yeah,
that's
a great idea. I think like for career changers, projects, you hear it from the hiring manager, projects
yeah,
are the most important. 1 to 2 solid projects that have been deployed
right.
to the web. And I like Denita's idea of like revamping known websites.
Yeah.
You know, like how would you improve it? Like what would you do differently? Or even if you just do it and just put it on your resume, hey, I can build this website. You know,
That's
this complicated site, I built it myself. You
yeah.
know,
Because sometimes I've asked the question, like, I'd ask the question, like, how would you, you know, it's like a high level question. How would you build Facebook, or how would you build the Facebook homepage or something like that?
yeah,
So, like, if you've done something like that, then it almost puts you at an advantage. So, cool.
that's true. This was amazing. Thank you so much for your time, Kelvin. Thank you so
You,
much for joining, everyone. These were like really great interviewing tips. And I'm so happy you gave us the privilege of talking to you. I know your time is
thank you.
valuable, so thank you for spending the time with us. And everybody, happy Saturday. Thanks for joining. And I will see you next week. But you'll see me in my videos. You see
Yeah,
me.
we'll see you all the time. Yeah, I gotta give you your flowers. You're doing such a great job. Keep going.
Thank
Love the
you.
content. Like, I'm a big fan, big follower. So just keep going, keep helping the industry, helping people get into it. And I'll try to keep doing the same. Thank you for inviting me. This was wonderful. I don't even do a lot of these, so
It's
this is
fun,
like,
isn't
right.
it?
It's very fun. So thank you so much for just getting me out to do this. For sure.
Of course. Happy to do one with you if you want. But no, I love sharing content and I do this for free, okay? Like,
Yep.
because I like it and I want to see more color. I need more color
Sure, man.
in the industry because it's nice over here, people. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work to get over here. It's a lot of work,
It's worth.
but it's really nice over here. And so, hope you have a wonderful day. Get some rest. Eat some food. I'm gonna grab some breakfast, lunch. I don't know, brunch. And I'll see you online.
All right. Thank you. See you guys.
Bye.